all of our consciousness are unique. So it doesn't matter what color your consciousness is or what it identifies as. It is unique. It is its own singular, unique thing.
You know what's really interesting about what you said, though? Everybody's consciousness is unique, but everybody's subconscious is exactly the same.
Oh, that's deep.
Everybody, and that's why these things work on everybody,
true.
because your subconscious is monkey brain.
Yeah.
You got monkey brains underneath all of your ideas and your identity and your cool clothes and all that. You have monkey brains. Yes. And Edward Bernays and government officials and fucking politicians and company people are just bypassing your whole this is me and my identity brain and just digging deep into your fucking monkey brain.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself.
Yo, what's up, internet? Welcome back to another episode of 3 Averagely Intelligent Dudes, and today we're discussing dangerous ideas. The dangerous idea that we have for you today is one that we've been waiting to talk about for a while. This is like a topic that all three of us are very passionate about. We're going to be talking about a person, actually. This person, his name is Edward Bernays, and he is the godfather of public relations, essentially. You know what I mean? He's the man that created the public relations space as we know it, but that's kind of his word, the public relations thing.
Yes.
But I think we're going to talk a little more about psychology and how psychology has been used over time to manipulate the masses, really.
This is kind of he knew what he was doing. Look at this guy a little bit. Yeah. And you can say whether it's good or bad. I think Mac has some interesting points about, certain quotes of his where I can kind of see where Edward Bernays is coming from. But it goes deep. It's one of those. It's one of those things when you start thinking about Bernays, you start thinking about all the psychology of groupthink and like mass appeal, and then how that is interplayed with capitalism in the the 21st century now. And one of the points that I want to make to the audience is if you don't interact with our Instagram, you should. Because my man over here knocked it out the park with the Bernays sauce meme.
Yeah.
So
you probably saw it. If you didn't, like you said, check out the Instagram.
At TAID3I on Instagram.
It's right here.
Right here.
This beautiful name. But I also think that it's important to note that I feel, and I think a lot of other people feel, that Edward Bernays is probably the most influential person of the 20th and 21st century that you've never heard of. Because I never heard of him, but then learning what he has done and what his work has gone on to do, I 100% agree with that assessment, that he is the most influential person that you've never heard of.
I love it. It's like, who's his uncle?
Yeah.
Just Sigmund Freud.
Just
Sigmund
the
Freud.
grandfather of psychoanalysis. And
I mean, that man pretty much wrote the book on psychology, like as the way we practice today in human behavior and analysis. And I mean, I don't even think that there was an idea out there about a subconscious mind before Freud kind of brought that, maybe some of you psychology buffs out there
Plato was talking about the subconscious mind.
Yeah?
It goes back quite a while.
We'll say this, though, but if you put Ian on the name of somebody's name, like on the end of somebody's name, like Freudian, now you know they're big shit.
Yeah,
because he's got Ian on the end of his name.
You know what I mean? Like they created
you can be
study.
A Freudian person, or like, like I'm a Freudian psychologist.
Yeah, like you study this guy.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about his cousin. The best way
Nephew.
to introduce Let's talk about his nephew. The best way to introduce this man to you guys is probably the way that we were introduced to him. It's through this documentary. It's a YouTube documentary that you can watch. Of course, we source all of our material, so the link is in the description below. But it's called The Century of the Self. It's a really interesting watch, and we're going to show you a couple of excerpts from it.
Yeah,
here.
I wanted to give you guys this too. The first time I got to see this, and it was pretty life-changing for me to watch the whole thing. The first time I got introduced, I had come out to LA for the very first time to stay for like 10 days and completely changed my life after that. That one little trip, I was on recovery from surgery, watched this, hung out with my mans for like 10 days, and we were just like, remember at the end of it, I was like, I'm moving out here.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm moving out here, but I'm moving out here.
Deadass.
Here we are like 2 years later.
No, yeah, that was a good part about it. That's what's going to be so great about this conversation today and why you should really stick tuned, because out of a lot of the things that we talked about, this is probably the most useful thing that you can use. You know?
Right.
Like that's kind of what we thought about when we wanted to have this discussion here, was just like, people need to know that this stuff is happening out here, because then you can be proactive and study it and use it for your own defense or offense or whatever you want to do. But you got to understand the game that's being played out here so that you can play it well.
Yeah,
you'll never win the game if you don't know how
the game.
Yeah, think of it the same way as like analyzing a movie. Like if you're really into movies and you analyze a movie, okay, now start doing that with a commercial. Start understanding why they say the things that they say and who's saying
how
it.
they say them. Yeah. Okay, so let's figure out who Edward Bernays is through this Century of the Self.
100 years ago, a new theory about human nature was put forward by Sigmund Freud. He had discovered, he said, primitive sexual and aggressive forces hidden deep inside the minds of all human beings.
I love this fucking music.
Yeah, I want to remix it so bad.
Controlled, led individuals and societies to chaos and destruction.
Yeah, good cut.
This shit gets me every time.
Those in power have used Freud's theories to try and control the dangerous crowd in an age of mass democracy. At the heart of the story is not just Sigmund Freud, but other members of the Freud family.
Enter scary white man.
Nephew Edward Bernays.
Edward
Bernays.
Bernays.
Today, but his influence on the 20th century was nearly as great as his uncle's. Because Bernays was the first person to take Freud's ideas about human beings and use them to manipulate the masses.
He's got this like stair elevator.
Yeah, I didn't know they had those back then.
Oh yeah.
Top of the line for Edward Bernays.
Top of the line. Yeah, that was.
Corporations for the first time how they could make people want things they didn't need by linking mass-produced goods to their unconscious desires.
There's the thesis statement for you.
Yeah, that's the one right there.
Out of this would come a new political idea of how to control the masses. By satisfying people's inner selfish desires, one made them happy and thus docile. It was the start of the all-consuming self, which has come to dominate our world today.
So true.
I mentioned that last podcast.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, the
all-encompassing truth, self.
Yes.
Not truth. My apologies.
So a little synopsis there. That's Edward Bernays, and in the early 1900s, he met his grandfather, or his great uncle, I think, or his
It's just his uncle.
It's just his uncle. Yeah. Okay, and his uncle at the time was working on Sigmund Freud ideas, like all the Sigmund Freudian ideas that we have today: id, ego, superego, understanding how people don't make rational, logical thinking decisions. They make more feeling-based decisions, and that
100% feeling-based. It's not more like it's 100% feeling-based.
Right. Yeah, like we'll talk about that later. You use your logic to justify
Your
what it
feelings,
is you're already
yeah.
doing to satisfy your feelings. So he starts getting wise to that, which is cool from a textbook psychology standpoint. But then I think that Bernays was cool because he used that in a functional space. He like,
put
okay,
that to use.
That knowledge, like where could we use this? Maybe kind of unfortunately, I don't know, pros and cons to everything. He used it to advance capitalism.
And before that, the way he really learned this trait is he was the propaganda man.
Yeah.
So he wrote the book Propaganda. Check it out. It's about propaganda.
It's literally he wrote the book on propaganda.
Yeah. So then he takes the idea. This is a great example of the military transition into the civilian marketplace of ideas. Yeah. He takes the idea of propaganda and he's like, wait a second. We can use this with corporations to make people do what we want them to do, which is buy more things.
And that was what they were saying in a sense too. Like he said, they learned to link conscious desire of things into material goods, right? So like before Bernays' ideas, if you wanted to sell a toaster oven, right? And you're like, this is my toaster oven.
This is how good it works.
That's what it was. It was like, my toaster oven has more kilowatts of energy than this guy's toaster
Puts
oven.
out 1,800 BTUs of heat or whatever.
Lasts the longest.
Yeah, my
it's robust.
Yeah, it's robust, strong materials. But you built it, you advertised it based on the functionality of the tool.
Right.
Bernays kind of brought it in and said, like, No. You need to
Express
make
yourself
this. Yeah, you need to make
through
this
your
like a
toaster.
status symbol.
Right.
This toaster needs to mean something about who you are as a person.
Are you racist? Get
Yeah.
a racist toaster.
Right, exactly. Like you can't. Why would you buy a bottom of the line? Aren't you wealthy? Don't you see yourself as a
Yeah.
luxurious person?
Your toaster
You
only
need-
has 2 slots.
What is this
You
fucking?
cleared 100K last year.
Yeah, and you see this play into everything now. So like cars, right? Like why do you want a BMW over a Honda Accord? Like they're both cars. They both get you from point A to point B. They both use the same gas. Why BMW $20,000-$30,000 more? Well, because Bernays taught us how to become like your BMW is now a status symbol of like who you are and how you are as a person. And so that's kind of how Bernays changed this whole consuming aspect. The reason I think that was important though too is back then you bought a car, like that was your car. You didn't buy another car till your car broke. You didn't need another car, right? Yep. Everything was based off of just what do I need? What has utility? Now you buy a new iPhone every year. Why?
You trade it in to get the newest one.
Newest
You're
one.
like, take this one that's perfectly good. I want the better one.
Yeah.
What happens to that other one?
Trash, right? Damn. Like,
Come on, man.
But you see how it's
Tripping me
played
out.
out now over hundreds of years, where it's like if somebody rolls up in the room with an iPhone 6, you're like looking at them funny, like, you know, they came out with 6 new ones.
I just saw a YouTube short of some guy at the All-Star game, one of the NBA All-Stars, like had the flip phone and the other guys like roasting him
Yeah,
for it.
right.
And
Yeah.
it was like a whole ass meme.
Yeah, exactly.
Some guy got roasted. Some NBA player who just signed a deal where he makes $20 million a year. People were roasting him online because he wore this like regular person casual outfit, and they were like, "Bruh, you got money? Like, how come you still shopping at Walmart or whatever?"
Yeah.
And in the post game press conference, he was like, "What am I supposed to wear? Like a $5,000 chain to the game?" He was like, "I wore clothes that I was comfortable in. I was about to play basketball on a professional level. Like, I didn't see that there was anything wrong."
Shout out Usher, who showed up in the full one-piece Mountain Dew drip tracksuit with about $110 million worth of jewelry around his neck,
Yeah.
sitting next to like fucking the guy who's the NBA logo. And
Yeah.
like another guy.
Jerry West.
Yeah, it was like Jerry West and somebody else sitting next
And
to
he's just
Usher.
Mountain Dew dripping.
And he's
Come on,
Mountain Dew dripped.
Who is this?
Usher at the
Usher.
NBA All-Star
That's
game.
funny.
It was last night. Full Mountain Dew drip.
Bruh. He looks like he's about to come out of a like double mint gum commercial. or
Yeah, it
something.
looks like what it feels like to chew 5 gum. That guy looked like a whole ass kiwi.
That's funny, man. That's
Kel's
funny.
doing his thing.
Yeah,
too.
he's got like 18 Cuban link chains on right now. That's
But you know,
kind of excessive.
but
But different strokes for different folks.
right. But I mean that's Edward Bernays for you, man. That's why you
Status
feel like
symbols and,
now clothes are an expression of who you are as a person. Like your car, everything that you own became this like function of desire more than utility.
And when we talk about this guy doing this, it's not like an abstract thing. He did it. He's the one who said, like, I'm taking propaganda and calling it public relations. This is how you manipulate the masses. I'm gonna write books.
he
about that.
specifically says, we'll pull up the
we're not.
clip.
There's no like, this ain't a secret.
No, I got
This reception in Paris astounded Bernays and the other American propagandists. Their propaganda had portrayed Wilson as a liberator of the people, a man who would
False.
create a new world in which the
but their
individual
propaganda,
could be
like
right.
free. They had made him a hero of the masses.
Look at that. In the streets of Paris,
And as he
Viva
watched
Wilson.
the crowds
It's hilarious.
surge around Wilson, Bernays began to wonder whether it would be possible to do the same type of mass persuasion, but in peacetime.
When I came back to the United States,
just sounds evil.
He does.
I decided that if you could use propaganda for war, you could certainly use it for peace. And propaganda got to be a bad word because of the Germans using it.
Fucking Germans,
So
man.
what I did
You shut your goddamn mouth.
was to try to find some other words. So we found the word Council on Public Relations.
He looked like, pretty
Bernays
good, huh?
returned to
Yeah,
New
you
York
good on that?
and set up as a public relations counsel in a small office off Broadway. It was the first time the term had ever been used. Since the end of the 19th century, America had become a mass industrial society, with millions clustered together in the cities.
Still happening.
Bernays was determined to find a way to manage and alter the way these new crowds thought and felt.
Yep.
To do this, he turned to the writings of his uncle Sigmund.
Can't let them
While
think for
in
themselves.
Paris, Bernays had
That's what I'm
sold
saying.
him
Got to influence
the
their
gift of
thought
some
and
Havana
feelings.
cigars.
Yeah.
In return, Freud had sent him a copy of his general introduction to psychoanalysis. Bernays
Hilarious.
wrote, "In the
Yeah.
picture
He sends him his
of the
Cuban
rational
cigars,
forces
and his
of
uncle
psyche
sends him his own book.
That's
You should
funny.
read the book that I wrote.
Might make money by manipulating the unconscious.
What Eddie got from Freud was indeed this idea that there is a lot more going on in human decision making, not only among individuals, but even more importantly among groups, than this idea that information drives behavior. And so Eddie began to formulate this idea that you had to look at things that would play to people's irrational emotions. And you see, that moved Eddie immediately into a different category from other people in his field and most government officials and managers of the day who thought if you just hit people with all this factual information, they would look at that and say, oh, of course. And Eddie knew that was not the way the world worked.
Bernays set
It's like
out
that.
to
It's like that
expose-
salesman type of mentality. Like if you go to somebody's house to sell them a vacuum cleaner, and they have a perfectly good vacuum cleaner, but you sell them the emotion of like the new vacuum
The
cleaner.
new
You know
vacuum.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like that wasn't a status symbol or a thing previous to this man, and he really crafted.
Yeah.
It's like he got okay. So he was like, okay, my uncle Sigmund Freud has the sauce. I'll give him some Cubans. He'll give me the sauce. I can take this sauce, relabel it, slather it all over American capitalism,
Right on it.
and then just horse that thing.
Even like they said too, like it's like propaganda. Like he said, that word is slimy. Like if you felt like people are like, oh, I can't believe they do all that propaganda in North Korea to make them seem like this and that. I'm like, why are you acting like America don't do that?
you ever go
Like,
to any sort of
America
sporting
do-
event where we're like, America, all the bombs are great.
Do a flyover of F-16s over the ball field for no fucking reason.
Kill everybody the best.
Yeah,
You know,
the
like.
biggest mech machines you've ever seen. Yeah,
But no, seriously, right? That's
Like,
that is propaganda. You
It
know,
is.
like
It's
that's,
propaganda.
You know,
You want to
if
know
come
about
out here-
propaganda? The Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
In schools.
Uh-huh.
I can't believe. Like
Daily.
I thought about that back in the day.
Educate me. Give
Like
it to me.
every single day, you would have to in homeroom or whatever. In elementary school, you're like 5 years old. You stand up,
Face the
I
flag.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the and you don't know, but you know what? It's just like Bill Burr said in one of his bits, where he was trying to figure out why Scientology sounded ridiculous to him, but Christianity didn't. And he was like, I can relate a lot more to the story of Scientology. It's got spaceships, like the dude was around like 60 years ago, like. All of this is actually easier to believe for me than Christianity, but I learned about Christianity when I was a child. And so when I was a child, everything sounded believable to me if it came from an adult. And so that was my story. Like now I'm a Christian. And so 50 years later when you're growing up and some guy's like, oh yeah, no, our religion is spaceships and aliens and stuff. And you're like, what a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you got a guy walking on water who came back from the dead.
Right,
and it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
which one of those sounds more believable?
You got a guy who's like mid-30s, whose first commandment when he was God was be fruitful and multiply. Didn't have no kids.
Didn't have any kids.
Didn't have no kids.
Weird. You know what else is weird? Not to mention, like, all of the things other than maybe aliens in Scientology, we already have. Like, we have spaceships.
Resurrection.
Never seen a man walk on water. Never seen that.
I've seen him float though. I've seen
Well,
a
I
man
mean, everybody
float.
floats.
I'm just saying.
That's a good It quote from Stephen King. Everybody floats.
But what I thought was interesting is like they said it was like the whole goal was to influence the thoughts and emotions of people.
The masses.
That's what I was saying. It's not even on an individual level, but on the mass level, how it becomes easier. And now look at the world that we live in today. You know, I take back to like Tiger King. Right, probably the most viral sensation that we've seen in the last 5 years. Right?
Yeah, because it goes back, like Making a Murder was like a big viral
That's true.
sensation,
That's
and
true.
then there was like Tiger
That's
King,
true.
and then there was like Baby Yoda. Like there's
Yeah.
a bunch of
there's a couple that have happened since, but but damn, you're right. Making a Murderer might have been like that first one
that was the first Netflix like documentary type of
that
one.
Went crazy. Because I mean, we've seen a lot of viral sensations. Let's get twisted. But the reason I bring up Tiger King was because that you might scroll through Netflix and be looking at everything that Netflix has to offer, and not pick Tiger King at all.
Oh yeah,
not think anything about that seemed interesting or whatever to you, but
number one on trending.
You go everywhere on social media and you see nothing but Tiger King doc this, Tiger King really hot. Yo, I watched
social
it.
Proof.
Shit was social proof.
Yep.
And it drives you, and next thing you know, you're like, I should go check out this Tiger King thing.
Well, you just don't want to be left out of the conversation.
Right?
Even if you're not interested in tigers or backcountry people who own tigers, you're just like, well, shit, every time I go out with my friends, they're talking about this show, and I don't know shit about it.
And
they're sharing memes and shit. I don't get it.
And this is what's interesting about the whole status symbol thing is, like, status symbols are inherently built upon social proof.
Right.
Like, there is no status symbol that nobody else wants. That would just be your niche thing. Like, by definition, a status symbol is something that very few people have, but everybody wants.
Right.
Like, that's the whole idea. And so if you don't have a large group of people doing it, then there's nothing happening. And that's why Bernays focuses on groups specifically. He's like, I'm not trying to just influence one guy. I want to influence this whole group of people to move in a certain direction.
And to do what you just said, make everybody want it.
Yep.
If I can make everybody want it, then its value will skyrocket. Even if it wasn't valuable. So many things are not NFTs today. You know what I mean? Is the perfect example of that too. How do you take something that's fundamentally, and I get it. Okay, utility, right? So like there's value in a concert ticket or whatever. So I get utility, but I'm just whatever. Even still, a concert ticket is worth $400 tops. Okay, maybe say 1,000, but you pay 100,000, 60 million for the NFT. Why is that value increased? Like, what makes that NFT worth 60 million, but this person's NFT?
Well,
only
this is the
10,
beauty. I can't wait to get into this because we said social proof, and what Bernays kind of did was come up with astro proof, where it's like I can falsely coerce gigantic masses of people into the ideas I want them to believe by making them think that everybody believes them.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I put out this. I back it. This is backed by everybody. MTV plays a video, VH1. Back in the day, it was just like, okay, we want this artist to succeed. Push them on all platforms.
Everywhere.
It's like it was like a form of like, what's that shit you pay DJs to play your shit on the radio? What's that called? Kickbacks? Is it kickbacks? That's not it.
Bribes?
No, well, it's a bribe, but there's a specific word for like when you pay a DJ. Anyways,
pay to play. But,
it's something like that. Pay to play. But literally like you could create mega stars.
Yeah.
You talk about documentaries now. What about the one where the guy made NSYNC or whatever? Or like he made so now you got
Lou Pearlman story.
That shows some Bernays in the music industry where it's like, all we got to do is take these good looking young white boys and parade them in front of the mall girls.
Yeah.
And
they'll build them.
Yeah, it's social proof. So
and there was
like,
nothing that made those four boys any more miraculous than, like, he actually literally held tryouts to just find people who he thought he could mold. And then, like you say, he took money.
Lou Pearlman, right?
And Lou Pearlman, right? Dude, watch that one. That one's also a YouTube documentary. I think you have to have YouTube Premium, but it's great story.
You don't have to have YouTube.
No, you'll figure it out. We're not going to promote it, but you'll figure it out. Yeah. But you can watch the Lou Pearlman story. I forget what, like, boy band or
Check
something.
it in the description.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
It's great stuff. But anyways, same thing. It's anybody who has access to media, right? That's why media is so huge in this. You can promote an idea, and that idea can take hold. And once it does, then you can increase the value of something forever. You know, so that is, like you were saying about Woodrow Wilson. They ran that campaign to make him seem like he was the hero of Vienna or whatever. But that might not have necessarily been the truth.
That's a great example of like, it wasn't, yeah. But like the media is the propaganda arm of the government.
It is.
So like our media is controlled.
Right.
So we have this, or most of it. There's independent media, but most of it is controlled in the sense of like the public relations. Shout out Bernays again for coming up with that term. Is what that's what the media is. That's why they come out there and have former CIA dudes. It's why every time somebody talks on the Senate floor, it's like, now with us right now is Lindsey Graham. You know, like they're ready to talk to people. It's like they're the propaganda arm.
And I want to interject in the conversation. I kind of want to validate the conversation real quick, because I know a lot of people might be saying like, I know this, right? But like, I think there's a difference between like knowing that it's happening and knowing how it's happening and how deep it's happening. Because my thing is like, if we all know that this is happening, why are they still doing it? You know, that's my thing all the time is like, if we're all aware that commercials make you want things, you think that we would have built some type of armor against it. But I think that that's the key is like psychology tricks or whatever, they work whether you want them to or not. Like it is the way your brain works. And if your brain gets hacked, it's just tough to not do it.
This is waking up.
Yeah.
This is what waking up. If you want to talk about woke, we'll redefine it in my terms. This is kind of like the waking up where you're like, okay, wait. Everything around me is trying to influence me on every layer, meta layer, top layer, ironic, like everywhere. It's all over us. Yes. It's on our clothes. It's in our commercials.
We do it to each other.
It's the culture, right? Yeah. So it's like Bernays was like, okay, I'm going to slather my sauce all over capitalism. It created this consumer culture. And, you know, I think that I'm not against capitalism. I think it could work tons of different ways than it is right now. But right now, it feels like Bernays was like, I'll just put a little bit of this propaganda in the machine and now make all the corporations control the message that they want to put out.
The problem I'm having now with capitalism is not capitalism, it's consumerism. But the problem is that capitalism is fueled and built on the back of consumerism. You know, the only way we can stay this megalithic superpower is if we continuously produce and continuously consume. And so that's where I look at Bernays and I say, like, I think you're the not you, but these ideas that were interjected are the kind of toxic, the poison that's fucking us up, you know?
I feel like if he turned it on, we should be able to turn it off, right?
Well, this is interesting. I actually, personally, I think that your assessment of, you know, what you just said about capitalism is in a sense correct, but also in a sense, I feel like consumerism, like there's no way that we can not consume. You know what I mean? Like we're going to consume. Like you're gonna do something. And I think that's why we tend to think about like producing. You want to balance out your consumption with a little bit of production because production actually gives your life like some meaning and stuff. But just if we just focus on consuming, there's no way you're gonna get away from consuming. I think the problem is that people don't consciously consume. They let people like Edward Bernays and whatnot pull their subconscious and let them decide how they consume. And I think that that's really the problem where capitalism, like you were saying, like the problem of capitalism is not necessarily, like I like capitalism in the sense that it makes them beholden to us as long as we're conscious of it.
Some free market, yeah.
You know,
I'm a fan of that.
Well, because if you think that they're really just out here for greed and they just want to make a lot of money, then that means that whatever we're buying, they're making. But if we're not consciously doing it, then we're just taking whatever it is that they give us. And I think that that's where people get into the weeds with capitalism is that, like, unfortunately, because our societies and the masses, if you will, quote unquote, are so easy to manipulate, that makes capitalism, like, it has a very low floor and a very high ceiling. So, like, on the good end, it could be really, really good. But on the bad end, it's really, really bad.
It's like a dog that we raised, beating it its whole life, and now it'll just maul people, and we're like, that's what capitalism is. You know?
Right, exactly. It's like you see a snapshot of it, and you're like, wow, this is just, this is just capitalism. Yeah. It's like, well, not necessarily. Like, if you gave that dog a lot of love and affection, maybe it would lick you instead of biting your face.
Rod pulls up credit culture, and that just hit me like a ton of bricks, too, because that's deep right there. It's like capitalism and this consumerism, like, not just capitalism. It's part of the machine. It's a cog in the many-geared wheel of our economy, you know what I'm saying? But, like, the consumerism cog is pulling a lot of weight, and it's cranking. And it's got us up to $910 billion in U.S. credit card outstanding debt.
Average American carrying $6,194, and that's just in credit card debt. I'm about to actually go really deep on this because this is what I'm talking about. Like, I really want our viewers to understand, like, how much is working on us, right? And, like, what they're doing. It goes so deep than you think. So not only are they encouraging you, they're encouraging you to buy things that you can't even physically afford to buy at the moment, right? But because you have to have it, they've created such a strong desire in you to have these things that you'll go out and spend money. You'll harm yourself in order to keep the machine. Because like you said, I get that, like you said, capitalism and all that stuff is great, and consumerism, you're going to consume, but overconsumption, consuming above your means, that's not healthy. I don't care what, and why do we feel like we need to do that? So here's my thing. I eliminated this to say credit card debt, because the actual average total debt was like $155,000 per American.
With like housing.
With housing and home equity lines, everything. Here's the thing, though. I listened to Grant Cardone break this down for me one time, and it hit me really hard. He could be bullshitting too, but hit me really hard. He said, do you know why every American should own a house? Like there's this idea out there that the American dream involves owning a home. Mm-hmm. That's important. As a person, it's important for a person to own their home. And it's like, why? Now, you need a home. Like, don't get me twisted. You need somewhere to reside and keep yourself fine. But why do you need to own? He was like, the banks sold you that dream. Because the banks, what is a bank's job to do? You think a bank's job is to hold your money. It's not. The bank's job is to lend money. They make money by lending money. Right. That's what a bank does. That's how a bank transaction makes money.
Why do you think their lobbies are so big?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if you're making money because you're loaning money, you got money.
You got money.
That's why your building's so nice.
They said a long time ago, okay, well, I need a vehicle to lend money. I can't make money if I can't lend money, so I need people to need money.
Oh, property.
I know. What if we convince every person that they need to buy a house? And you don't got $150,000, $200,000 laying around, but you got to buy a house. How you going to show your parents that you're a functioning, fully grown adult? You don't even own your own home yet. And look how people treat you when you do buy a house. Bought my own house. Dang, dude, you bought a home. Wow, you're popping out here now, right?
Which is funny because you really didn't do anything. You actually didn't buy a house. Yeah. The bank was like, yeah, we'll let you live in this house that we own for a while.
You stop paying for that house.
Yeah. And, after you've paid us what the house is worth on top of our, percentage that we get, then we'll let you pretend to own the house, even though technically the land that your home is on is not owned by you either. You don't own anything.
The government can come take that land from you.
And what do you think they're going to do with that house when they take the land? Yeah. They're going to give it back to the bank.
But you see what I'm saying, though? I want to touch on something before you go. Dream just to make more money.
I want to touch on the fact that America was built on this stake your claim. There's land for everybody, which was a false thing to begin with because the Native Americans were here and we were like, that's our land now. I touched it. And so America's then built the 13 colonies on stake your claim. Mm-hmm. Come get your property. Mm-hmm. You know what? Take care of it. Tend the land. Mm-hmm. We need farmers. 90% of us are making corn. Come on. Mm-hmm. We need more corn people. Yeah. So, and then people start heading west, and what do? Stake their claim. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And then, like you said, banks and these people like money lenders, financial institutions rise to this prominence to where they're like, oh, shit, we can own these houses. Mm-hmm. We can own this property. And like you said, we can tell the people they need one of these.
They need them. Yeah, we'll make them one. Like you said, I don't mind the bank being there for me when I want to purchase my own home. That's great. But they really did. They sold you that dream, like that American dream of you get to own your own home. And that's going to be somehow more beneficial to you than renting your home.
Depends on your situation.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying that you should rent, but I mean, Grant Cardone actually says you probably should rent. He was like, I even rent, but because I get what they're saying in a sense, like I said, maybe if you're using it, this is not to say somebody who's using it as a means of production. So if you're trying to be a bank, if you're renting out homes and that's how you make money, then I get it. But my thing is you're a consuming American. Your only thing is you just want a house to live in. Why would you need to own it instead of rent it, Mm-hmm. But the bank got to get that money. The bank got to get that money. But that's Bernays sauce.
Yeah, because when people were farming, they didn't have, it wasn't a status symbol like my corn is, I got more.
You weren't trying to outbuild Jimmy's fucking cottage down the street.
No, you're trying to eat for the winter time. Yeah, put your grain in a silo, my guy.
Mm-hmm. And then that's my point is that's when you see, like you said, there's the level of consumption where you buy the things that you need, maybe buy some things that you want, but you won't consciously go out here and run yourself into ultra debt. You're not going to run yourself into a competitive, just fuckfest with your neighbor until they influence you to think that you need these things past what you already have. And this is why we see it.
I don't necessarily know about the competing nature and the keeping up with the Joneses and everything. I think that we're we might be failing to realize that they didn't come up with any of these things. They're just tapping into things that we were already feeling. So you might say that they've been able to amplify those feelings, but like all of these things that we're doing were already inside of us already. Like, so
that's the Freudian point.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, they're just the first they're the people that had saw that, discovered it, and was like, oh, we could totally use this against them, or use this in our own favor, whether or not it benefits them or not. I don't necessarily know how malicious it seems. And this is the point that you mentioned in the intro where I was talking about, like, he made that point, Edward Bernays did, when he was talking to those interviewers at that table. And he said, I figured that if we could use propaganda for war, we could use propaganda for peace. Now, I'm not a big fan of propaganda, but if you're going to be using it, and I can't say anything about that, I'd rather you use it for peace than for war.
He didn't say for peace, he said in peace.
If you could use propaganda for war, you could certainly use it for peace.
Like, meaning we can use propaganda for our own self-satisfaction
in peacetime.
In peacetime, yeah.
Well, either way, I think but the point is not necessarily like, I think that it's very easy to prescribe malicious intent to a lot of these people because of the outcomes that we see hundreds of years later. And I think that it's important to realize that these are all things that we all use against other people to get what we want.
Right.
And that it's not so much that you need to like avoid using these things. It's just so much, like you said, like, it's about the ability to hear the story that they tell you. You need to buy a home. And then for you to consciously take that story and be like, do I need to buy a home? Is that what's best for my situation? And then make your own decision. Like, maybe you do want to buy a home, and like maybe you want to pass it on to your children or whatever. Like, then buy a home by all means. But if you're like, nah, I'm a free, loving, traveling kind of person, then buying a home really doesn't seem like the best thing for you. And so the point of this discussion is not so much to talk about where people went wrong in using it, but it's just so much to point out these are the things that are happening inside your brain that you may or may not be aware of. But if you are aware of it, then you can use, like, I've implemented like little cues or like, you know, tools, like you said, to make sure that I'm staying on my track and not on the Edward Bernays track.
Yeah, because
I don't think that there's going to be a point where we like get rid of the Edward Bernays track or whatever.
Nah.
Like the only time it's going away is if the masses become woke, if you will.
Yeah,
like if they all start realizing like, oh, I'm being manipulated by these people and I actually don't need to do the things that they think I need to do.
I think Edward Bernays misspoke. He said you can use the propaganda in peace or for peace, but I think what he meant was for obedience and to make the people obey.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that is what propaganda for peace is. It's control. And you even mentioned when we use it in our everyday life on each other, we do that to obtain obedience, to get what we want, to manipulate in some way. And that is what Edward Bernays is talking about there. He's like, if I can make the soldiers kill the Germans, I could probably make the Americans buy the Nike Air Max.
Yeah, yeah. And like you said, to create a docile and obedient, thing. That's the thing that people really don't know. Is like they've turned this consumerism is our it's our leash. It's the way that they keep us pacified and stop from.
It's our thunder vest. Like we're a dog that barks at everything, and they just put the thunder vest on us, and it's like, oh, okay, consumerism.
We're good.
We're good.
We're rich.
We're rich.
I got this Tiger King.
I got property,
and I got all this property, and I got this alcohol.
Call of Duty comes out this weekend.
55-inch TVs are down to $300.
I can get one of those, and I just got this shiny new credit card. I'm chilling.
Yeah,
and they're
hit
like,
the Rent-A-Center, baby. Yeah.
Your brother needs a new couch.
Oh, that's great.
Nah, but they did. They use that, and like you said, I mean, they do. We're talking about a capitalistic nature, but they use it for political natures too, right? Like, I mean,
that's in everything. Like I think that's the.
It's in everything.
I think Bernays, like for the capitalists, like for the business owners, they're obviously looking at it from a money standpoint. I don't really care. I don't really think that the business owners really care too much whether or not the masses are obedient, in the sense of like they listen to the politicians. They're like, you buy my stuff, then we're cool. If you stop buying my stuff, then we got problems.
Yeah.
Whereas I think with Bernays, because this documentary talks a lot about the stuff that he does with corporations, but it doesn't mention any of the work that he does with political people. Yeah. And so this is the thing, is that this is the main reason for doing this was not so much like the capitalism and the getting people to buy things is just the mechanism through which that they're getting you to be docile in terms of your viewpoints to the government and the people who are making the rules, if you will. I don't think that it's, like obviously the capitalists are like, hey, like we're going to hire Bernays. Bernays is really good at this marketing thing. Yeah. But in the end, Bernays is like operating on a completely different level to them. He's just like, yeah, I'm using you guys. Like I'm using you and your products to keep these people from overthrowing my real clients, who are the people that really pay me the big bucks, who are politicians and world governments.
True. I would love to play a little game, or maybe just like an exercise of the conversation of like pointing out some of the ways that we see this enacted. In this documentary, if you go and watch Century of the Self, they'll talk about how he used torches of freedom, and he convinced the feminist movement to start smoking cigarettes
to defeat the patriarchy.
Yes, as a part of their mission as feminists. It's like, if we smoke cigarettes, that'll really give it to them.
That'll give it to the boys.
Yeah,
we'll get lung cancer. That'll show them.
You know what I mean? Like, exactly. Like,
well, I mean, it did though. Like, it accomplished its mission. Like, the feminists did stick it to the men, like, but it was
to sell cigarettes, though.
Right.
It was to sell cigarettes. Because
it
wasn't
was a
for
million
the
ways
feminists to crush the patriarchy. It wasn't for that. It was
and I know what you're saying, but my point is that that's exactly what happened. Like, it's hard to say whether or not that was a net positive or a net like a net negative.
If it wasn't cigarettes, I could see it being more positive.
Because the women's liberation movement,
but the cigarettes is, but you can't remove it from the cigarettes, because the cigarettes is a one social aspect that women weren't allowed to do. Now, maybe you could say like, oh, women wearing like not wearing dresses or raising their dress level or something. Like, it could have been something like that, but now you're just getting into promiscuity. And so it's like, is that better than cigarettes? Hard to say. But
I got a great
these
joke.
Points, like, it's funny for me to think like this person manipulating this small group of women to then influence the larger group of women ended up progressing the feminist movement, which is funny to me. You know what I mean?
It's a placebo to me.
It's the Marlboro Man for women's suffrage. Like, I like, get out of my politics, cigarettes. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, women's liberation movement, it was like, burn our bras, vote, get education, like all these things, be equal citizens. And then the Marlboro Man was like, stick it to him with these cigarette penises.
I think you're discounting how big of an effect the cultural parts of these issues plays in.
I'm saying he admits himself in the documentary that was not the goal. The goal was to sell cigarettes. So maybe if there's like a secondary like positive net income on the women's liberation movement, which I'm sure there was, women smoking cigarettes more openly in public, got to a point where they felt like more freedom. So it was like a win for the women's lib movement, I guess. But you see what I'm saying? Like,
no, I do see what you're saying, because what I'm saying is what you're saying is Bernays Sauce works, which is like, we know. Like, if I get a new pair of Jordans, I feel good. I feel like I've accomplished something in my life. Have I? Yeah. But I feel like I have.
You smoked a cigarette in front of the men.
That's why I said, you know what I mean? It's like, we stuck it to them.
But the whole point is that the feelings are more important than all of the things that you guys are bringing up.
So my point, though, is why couldn't women just feel like they were no longer oppressed by men? Why did they have to smoke cigarettes to, like,
because that was a form of the oppression.
If I'm secure in myself, right, do I need to come out and prove this to the people? My homie, Kanye West, this is his mentality. And I even heard it, he talks about it in the documentary. He says, this is how they played us. He was like, as a black man, you feel like you got to wear chains and you got to show people how wealthy you are and how cool you are so that they won't lump you in some type of category. But that in itself is a chain, because the white man doesn't feel like they need to do that. White men don't feel like they need to. They wear T-shirts. Mark Zuckerberg wear T-shirts. He doesn't need to produce, but he's also not trying to fight against them. You know what I'm saying? So I get what you're saying in the sense that, like, it gave them a belief and it gave them, but it's still a persuasion, because they could have done that with none of that. They could have not smoked a single cigarette and still accomplished their mission in the way that they wanted to, without it being used against them and weaponized against them to sell cigarettes.
It could have been like, a freedom candle. And I'm not saying like the freedom candle making the money and selling them the freedom candles that they could hold out there and be like, I'm free, you can't stop me. It is different from a cigarette in the sense of like, one's not killing anybody, has no toxic chemicals, isn't addictive, isn't being pushed by a, even if the company's the same size as the Marlboro company, you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, but
one has a negative effect on women's health.
Yes.
And stuck in our society hard up until even to this day, even when we ripped it out of advertising. Bernays had cigarettes advertising. Like, that was a Bernays thing too. And we eventually were like, no.
This is not good for us.
When you mix with cigarettes and Bernays, you get all this cancer. So literally, as a people, ripped it out of our society. Like,
I think it's not that I'm like trying to defend his like use of cigarettes.
You're saying
in
that there's
his mission.
a positive outcome, and we agree.
No,
with
I'm
you.
saying that you're missing, or at least it seems to me that you're missing the point that the thing that he chose was not necessarily influenced by the cigarettes, but more so it had to be something that men wouldn't allow women to do. Otherwise, it wouldn't actually achieve the thing that he wanted to do, which was to promote this women's suffrage thing, which is not what he actually cares about. Again, it's about selling cigarettes, but you can't make it selling cigarettes if women were already allowed to sell cigarettes. You see what I'm saying?
Or buy
cigarettes. He had to inject this rebellion into it. It was more so of like push back against what you're not told to do, more so than it. And I think that it would have been anything that men wouldn't allow women to do. I think that that's the part that I'm trying to point at, is that it being cigarettes is kind of,
I'm gonna hit you
because of the circumstance, but it was more so about, I have to convince these people to make a rebellious notion, and you can't rebel against something that's not already trying to force you into something.
I got 2 points. First of all, freedom is an inalienable right. So it's not something that you go out and prove. Like, it's something you already have. So if you are feeling like you have to, in which he convinced them that you need to go out and prove you're free by smoking.
Even though they could buy them.
You're already free. You were already free. You didn't need to prove that at all. So to say, in coercing them to go out and prove that freedom, that he gave them freedom, I think is a false premise.
He gave them freedom.
Okay, encouraged women's suffrage movement, because you were saying like the result was that they found freedom through doing these types of things. But I
was just pointing at more of the psychological point of it, which was like, you guys are pointing at he got them to buy cigarettes, and I was like, I thought that it was much more deeper than that. It was him using cigarettes as a rebellious thing because men wouldn't socially let women smoke cigarettes in public.
It was, but the entire ball is rolling because the cigarette executives come to him and go, man,
we want to sell more cigarettes.
We need to get these women to smoke more cigarettes. And he was like, you know what'll get them to smoke more cigarettes? Those ladies, they want more rights. So let's
tie these two
things together so we can get them to smoke themselves to death. And smoke all the Jimmy sticks you want.
Your point was placebos work, which they do. Like you said, I'm sure that women felt more free as they were smoking.
Well, it wasn't that the whole point of the conversation. We're talking about the psychology of it.
Bernays did put enough sauce on that cigarette campaign to make women feel like smoking cigarettes in front of men was a freedom.
Do you feel like this commercial is doing a lot to help black people and their rights to real skin tones? Or do you think that this is
racism.
to end racism and black suffering in America? Like Lizzo telling you that the new iPhone is better for black skin tones? This is a Super Bowl commercial from this year.
Yep.
Yeah. And they're saying
they've specially designed this camera, or at least this is what I'm supposed to understand from this commercial. I'm taking that they've specially designed this camera to somehow accentuate people of not white skin.
Yeah.
So now, when I first saw this commercial, my first thought was, they had this phone built before they came up with this marketing campaign.
Exactly.
Like, they didn't.
Well, that's the Bernays point.
That's the point.
Bernays
the point.
Yeah, that's the Bernays point.
Oh, I'm aware of that. Yeah. I'm aware of that. Yeah. And no, I personally, as a half black person, although my skin doesn't look like it, I don't think that this does anything for me. But that's not for me to say, because the whole point is that it's about feelings. It's about your own subconscious. And so I think that it's more so like you're right, placebos do work. And I'm saying, well, I guess you're right. Yeah, like I'm saying like placebos work. And I'm thinking like we should be focusing more on like the fact that we're using placebos to trick people into doing things rather than the idea like, oh, he's out here selling cigarettes.
Well, because that's what I was saying about conversations about how people are using this. Because one of the things I know that is a function of this Bernays is what I'll call setting the tone for the conversation, setting the agenda of a conversation, right? If I can influence you into thinking that your only choices are A, B, and C,
you've already won.
I've already won. It does not matter if you choose A, B, or C. I win, and I beat you just by establishing the idea that these are your only options.
You're talking about framing.
Exactly, framing.
Framing the
That's
conversation.
Exactly what it is, framing the conversation. So my point being is like, I can say, oh, I'm helping you make a choice. I helped you make a decision. I narrowed down your options for you so it became easier for you to choose. And so I'm like, am I helping you? Am I accomplishing a mission or whatever? Even if my result is women's suffrage gets advanced. My thing is, like you said, just like I don't think they designed this phone for black skin, I don't think they designed torches of freedom to help the women's suffrage movement. And I don't even think that I think maybe consequently it helped, but could have easily been done without it.
That's funny because I think about this and I'm like, all right, you can either get the iPhone, the Google Pixel with real tone, the Huawei, got my other options. Which one defeats racism?
Yeah. Right.
This one. Because the inner workings of this one are anti-racist.
Yes. And I believe in that. And so I need to buy this one.
Correct.
I need to buy this one so that I feel in aligned with my own beliefs and that I can also show other people that I'm in alignment with.
Well, you can make the argument, I guess, that it's like, oh, but the camera's better for like my skin tone. That's why I have to get it. Well, now you're saying that this one company owns the monopoly to the cameras that work for you.
Yeah. Because I would also
and that's already now your multiple choice is down to one. So if you believe that your skin can only be seen by one of these phones' cameras, now it's like they've looped you in. You want a working camera like everybody else? Do you want to post on Instagram?
You want to be able to take good
you
pictures
better get
like
a
everybody else?
Pixel with real tone.
Because that's the only way you're going to be able to do it.
And think about the minority group that's targeting. That's targeting not only just black people and people of color, but like darker skinned people of color. So now you're talking about like there's a minority of people in America and then like even more minor in that group because both of you would be considered people of color and black people. Yeah. But your skin tone's much lighter than some other people.
They wrapped everybody in here. They showed a lot of light skin tone.
But make no mark of. But think about this though. But like some of those people with those lighter skin tones probably don't deal with the same problems of lighting that somebody with like a really really dark skin tone deals with. True. So you're targeting a super hyper specific minority of people in America and saying, do you want a phone that works for you? This is the only option. Mm-hmm. And it's the brand new Google Pixel 4.
I'm saying, I guess I don't see what the negative is if it is like, as far as we know, or as far as I know, they said that they made this camera for people with darker skin tones. Hypothetically speaking, let's just take that at face value. Let's say that they did develop the camera to work for darker skin tones. This would be the very first time that I've ever heard of that being the case. And I don't know how they set up cameras, so maybe they use white people to like, I don't know, adjust them. I don't know. But if we're saying that is the case, and you are a very dark-skinned person who does have trouble getting good photos, and this phone solves that problem,
then it'd be amazing.
Then it would be amazing. And I think that I'm not so much worried that they're targeting a small minority of people or anything like that. It's just about like, hey, look, they're trying to play on the fact that you're a racial minority and that you have a skin tone of a certain melanin content.
That's why I like.
And whether or not, the point is that you shouldn't buy the phone because it's marketed towards black people. You should buy the phone if it actually takes better pictures of you and your friends.
Okay, so this is where I want to get to, though. That's my thing. That's where Bernays Sauce comes from. They don't sell you that. If the phone actually did that, then it would be a service to those people. This picture is not taken with a phone from 2022.
Yeah.
This picture is not a picture taken from a phone. That is not a Google. That's not a Apple iPhone 12.
That's nothing. Yeah.
That is not an Apple iPhone 12.
This is to play on your emotions to make you think that the Google Pixel is the one you have to have.
There's nothing I see better about this picture than any other phone on the market.
Well, I just laughed because when I first saw this commercial, I thought it was really funny that the pictures that they used to set up the premise were all super dark, which it's harder to see darker skin tones in dark light. But then there's almost no dark pictures after that to show like, well, look at our camera. They set it up
with lighting and everything.
Yeah, like it's all professional photos.
Easy. So that's my point though. But as a black person with dark skin, they'll convince you that they've done some type of proprietary thing to their camera.
I wanted the Jamaican version, but go ahead.
Yeah. Proprietary thing.
Those are horrible Jamaican accents.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't meant to be one. Yeah. So, but my point is, like, you know, and then they sell you a facade, a fake, a dream, an idea, and you'll really feel like I said, they're not helping you. They're not helping you. They're preying on you. Yeah. And that's the shit that fucks with me. It's like, I don't mind there being some Bernays sauce on things. But my thing is, like, you only selling the Bernays. You know, like, this only. Right,
this is like, there's a chicken strip. Yeah, we're selling you a chicken. This commercial is like, we're selling you a chicken strip sandwich with Bernays sauce on it. And then you get the sandwich and there's no bread. There's no chicken.
It's a plate
it's
of
just sauce.
Yep. It's like we sold you this box. There's just a fart in it.
Yeah. Sorry. Dude, dead ass. Like, imagine just eating ketchup with a spoon. Yeah. You know, it's not enjoyable. Now, French fries by themselves, also not that enjoyable. Fries and ketchup, amazing meal. But that's my point, is like, now they've just gotten to the point where they just sell you the sauce, and I don't like
They'll
that.
just sell you the sauce. Yeah. And this is why it's important. This is why this discussion is important, is that you need to be able to see the sauce and determine whether or not there's any chicken strip sandwich underneath it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I tell you, that's the whole point.
You know who saw the sauce? Ted Kaczynski. I was just thinking about this.
Ted Kaczynski looked right through that sauce.
He was because, like, you know, if you ever look into anything about the Unabomber, interesting story. I love the dramatizations. I've watched all the drama series based off of that because it's fascinating. But his whole thing about the Industrial Revolution being bad for mankind, he kind of touches on Bernays sauce. He doesn't. I don't think he goes by name talking about Edward Bernays, but he talks about, like, why do you sit at that red light in the middle of the night when there's no other cars there? Why don't you just go? What's stopping you?
Yeah.
Society's chains are stopping you. No. You know, like, this is like a real that ties into this mentality.
I think about that all the time. Actually, me and my brother have very in-depth conversations about the efficacy of that as well. You know, because I told him, I'm like, what? We've had these conversations on the podcast. I'm like, yo, I like my lines on my road. I used to be a guy who didn't like the lines on the road, but now I've kind of come to understand that, like, a base level of lineage on the road is important for maneuverability. But that's what's cool about when you do understand Bernays sauce. It's like, when you do stop at a stop sign at 3 o'clock, like, I blow through them bitches. At 3 o'clock in the morning, if I'm the only motherfucker out there, I'm blowing through stop signs.
If I don't see any more headlights, I'm just going right through.
You know what I mean? Because I can tell if somebody's coming. Like, I'm not going to be in a residential stopping every block for nobody out there. Like, that's fucking dumb. Yeah. You know?
Just roll them a little bit. Yeah,
you know, I give them a yield. Don't get me wrong.
I give them a full yield.
Just in case there's some dude. Because this is something that happens a lot here in Vegas, and I don't know what these motherfuckers are thinking, but people love to cross really dark streets while they're wearing all black hoodies and jeans and stuff, and I'm like, bruh, nobody can see you out here.
But this is all against the point. You know, if I'm at an intersection by myself in the middle of the night and I don't get the little green walking man, I'm not just gonna stand there like a fucking dumbass for 20. And then how long are you gonna stand there? What if the sign is broken? Yep. You're gonna stand there all night waiting for the little green man.
Guess I can't cross.
Right. But so many people will. You know, metaphorically speaking, I know you're thinking, no, I wouldn't stand it. But there are things that you do because
this is an example, a small example of a larger issue.
Why you wearing masks outside?
Because they told me.
I'll wait. You know what I mean? Like, I'll wait.
You know, this goes back to the story I told right before you played that little preface. Was the first night we saw this, we then walked down to Yum Yum Donuts in downtown Van Nuys, and it was like 3 a.m, and we were looking at the crosswalks, and it was like, this Bernays shit's everywhere.
It is.
Why are we not? We could just cross. We have to wait on the. Why are we waiting on the green man? There's no cars here.
Dude,
like, that shit hit deep.
It
hit on a deep level. That's why I think it resonated with me so much, is because I saw it on everything immediately.
Yes, everything immediately. Everything immediately. You know, it's like why they post a sign that says no skateboarding here or something like that, right? It's like that sign becomes effectively a security guard for them, because the way it works, that's Bernays sauce, right? It's like, now you feel like
you can't skate there.
That you can't skate here. No sign, you might run up on there and think. Now, you might be a rebel, so you might still do it because that's in line with your desires and beliefs. But if you're somebody who tries not to get in trouble or whatever, you're just not going to skate there anymore now, because why?
You're not allowed. This is a no skating area.
Somebody said something.
Yeah, exactly. But nobody said anything.
But this is the point, though, is that even when nobody says anything, and I think that this is really interesting for me, because this plays into how I view societal rules and things like that. And like, I'm somebody who, I like rules. Like you said, lines on the road and stuff. Like, when the rules make sense and they're effective, then I'm perfectly willing to follow them. When they don't make sense, then I'm perfectly willing to break those rules, because I see what, like, it's the difference, like they talk about it in legal terms, the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. And you could violate the spirit of the law by enacting the letter of the law in a situation that it really wasn't ever meant to be applied to. Like pulling somebody over for walking across the street without a little walking sign when there's nobody around.
Yeah, that's a
like
great
that scene
example
from Harold and Kumar where he like takes one step onto the road, that cop pulls up and he's like, "You're jaywalking." He's like, "There's nobody around here." And the spirit of the law is like, hey, we want to make sure that people understand that you can't just be walking out in the street willy-nilly because these cars have the right of way or whatever. But if there's no cars, then it doesn't matter, and there's no reason to be enforcing this dumb rule.
Important, because I'm like, yo, this is my thing. If you don't know these tricks, this is how you get fucked up.
Yep.
This is how, whenever there's a Black Lives Matter movement, you end up posting a black square on social media and feeling like you did something. Right? Because you got Bernays then thinking like, this is what we're doing.
This is what the movement is. Yeah, the movement
like that you said, we get roped into things like, oh, we took Aunt Jemima off the syrup. It's like, that's not it. That's them like being like, oh, this is what you want? Nah, but what about this thing over here?
Here's a little bit of Bernays on what you want. You're like, wait, but what I want's gone.
No.
This is just Bernays.
You want climate change? Well, what about this all natural peanut butter though? And you're like, oh, it's all natural? Okay, well I'm doing some shit.
Yeah, it's doing something,
I'm doing
right?
something right. Yeah, that's cool. Now I'm better for the environment.
Yeah, women's freedom.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, look, it's got a green safe sticker on it, and it's like, what's it made of? You don't really know. You stop.
You don't really care, really.
Right? You don't.
And this is the point that I think that we're really trying to get to, and me and Rob, we talk about this a lot. Is like, you actually have to care for anything to actually get done. Like, if you really want to see change, then you really have to care about it. Whereas like the black square is not, this is the problem, is that if you ask somebody straight up, they would tell you that it's doing something. But I think that subconsciously they're doing it because they need to portray to the rest of the crowd that they're one of them. They're not stepping outside of the line. They're not crossing the Bernays Sauce boundary that they've set up for everybody. They have to tell them, hey, we saw that you didn't have a black square on your page on Tuesday. What's up with that? And now you feel like, well, shit.
It's
like,
crazy
am I
to
supposed
me that person would do that though. That person would question you about your square as if it was important.
Well,
like, where did you get the idea that square was important?
But this is the thing though. This is the point though, is that what Bernays did is he took, like, Sigmund Freud discovered that the things that we would consider non-important are actually the most important. That's the point. And that's why this stuff is so effective. So you thinking like, oh, the black square is actually not important, because we're thinking, how do we solve the racial inequities in America?
Yeah.
Whereas Freud and Bernays know that that's not what's important at all. What's important is for people to feel like they are part of something that they agree with, that they really don't even understand. It's the innate human and mammalian desire to not stand out from the crowd and to stay in your little lane, and don't, because people forget this, but biologically, if you were standing out in the crowd, your ass got ate. You were getting taken down. Like, if you somehow stood out and was like noticeable to people, that's what got you fucked up. And that's why our brains still operate that way, because our brains haven't caught up with our society.
I agree 100% with everything you just said. For the means, for the end goal, to keep us docile. They create the square so you don't go out in the street and do the business of scraping Bernays sauce off of the fucking local police force. Exactly. They just want you to share the square.
Right.
Well, who came up with the square?
And then you'll do. Who knows? That's my point. Whoever wanted to sauce it.
Yeah.
But
whoever's
chefing the pot.
Whoever's fucking mixing the pot that day.
They got different names for him. Alex Jones calls them the globalists. I call them the World Economic Forum. You call them the 1%. They're out there. They're the ones that are in control.
The imaginary people that we all hate.
Yeah.
It sucks. But that's what they'll do, man. They'll give you this instead and make you feel like, hey, we're out here helping black people.
We're helping black people. We developed a camera for you.
Are you Google? Are you really though? I want to know if Google's really doing it.
It's true, man. Hey, man. But I get a point that I was kind of missing, but it's kind of starting to hit on me now too, where you're also drawing light to the fact that this is not evil. This is just the way it is. Like you said, like they're not making it like this. They're exploiting the fact that it's like this. You know, like you said, we all do this to. Why does a child cry when they want something? You know what I mean? Like they're trying to influence or manipulate their parents into giving them something that they want or desire. You know,
you just knocked that out of the park, bro. You said, "Fuck it, they didn't make it." Okay,
they didn't
make it.
Yeah, they're not. They're just using it so much better than we are. And I think that's what it is. It's like, but it's kind of like a shield. It's like a spell. Like once you're wise to the game, you can really peel back. Damn, you said it too. Like you can actually go out there and scrape that sauce off and say, no, I'm trying to get to the meat and potatoes.
Where's this chicken sandwich?
Yeah, like, no, I want police reform. I'm not fucking accepting Black Square. I'm not expecting like Black History Month. That's not going to cut it. Like, no, I want what I want.
That's what the true freedom auditor people that are doing it the right way do. Right. They just go film in public inside of public areas, and people who come up and use 48 laws of power to be like, I'm sorry, sir, but you can't film in here. That's illegal.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not. It's my First Amendment right. I'm doing a story. I'm an investigative journalist. I'm filming in the public areas. Because you could see the papers here. That's Snoop. You know, we're going to get the police in here.
Yeah.
And that auditor is doing the dirty business of showing you that people are covered in Bernays sauce.
Yes.
They're just NPCs who think that you can't do things that you can do according to the Constitution.
100. And
at the end of every one of these these little freedom audit things, he's like, all right, officers, have a good day. And they take the walk of shame.
Same, right.
Because he knows what he's doing. And he's educating people. And that's when you stand on that foot right there of educating people. I'm showing you that the system works a way that you don't think it works. Because you are so drenched in mayonnaise that you cannot fucking come out here and see what the truth is.
Yeah, 100%. And it takes work. I think that's why you said too. I think that's why it's so easy to do. It's so easy to do because ain't nobody out here learning psychology. Ain't nobody out here studying Sigmund Freud. Don't nobody know about how these things work and what these tricks are. And like I say, ain't nobody stopping.
Tell us in the comments if you knew who Edward Bernays was before this episode.
Before watching any of our content.
Not even just that you knew who he was, what he did, and all that shit. Like, tell us in the comments. I'd be willing to bet that nobody says that they
just didn't. You know, it sucks even sometimes too. We talk about this all the time in the game of social media. You know, it's like you can know what's happening and still fall for it. You know, you can know what's happening and still fall for it. Like I still want them Jordans. I still want that chain. You know, I know I don't need it. I know it's not important. Still want it.
Well, this is great because it's living within the system. So if you look at these 48 laws of power, people use them on you.
Yes.
And I mean like people. I don't mean like corporations. Corporations do too.
For the listeners, we should probably tell them 48 Laws of Power. He keeps mentioning 48 Laws of Power. That's a book that was written by a man named Robert Greene. And it is a very, very influential book. And
1998 it was released.
Yep. And it is basically a lot of people will describe it as like Machiavellian. Like this is a book that Greene wrote in a way to kind of, again, like Greene didn't want to promote people using this nefariously. I think that and I've listened to interviews of him. He's like, look, I'm just trying to let people know that there's these tools that people have at their disposal that they're using against you. And I'm trying to let you know that you could also have these tools in your disposal because they're not like each one of these laws of power or so is like a sword and a shield. You know, like if you know what it can do as a sword, then you have the shield that protects you from it. It's like an anti-venom for the venom.
This is nice because it brings me right back to the point I was making about 48 Laws of Power, which was essentially that everyone out here, not every single person, but everyone out here, they're using it on each other, whether subconsciously or some people knowingly. And when you know the 48 Laws of Power, even if you don't read it, if you just browse through it, or even if you just subconsciously understand that people are trying to manipulate you, just having that shield about you is a tool to use in your vocal interactions with people. Because like I said, everyone's trying to get you to do something. Everyone. Even if it's like look at people with a job. All of y'all probably have had jobs. Some of you haven't, but most of y'all probably had jobs. That job wanted you to do something, and it was your job to withhold the letter of what they wanted to, like their standard, you know, their SOP, which is just, hey, this is how we want you to present the Bernays sauce. Don't give any of your own sauce. We want you to interact with them. They'll give you a script. They'll give you a script and say, this is what you say when you answer the phone.
Yeah.
So it really does show how, like, and that's a corporation, but at the same time, that's a person within the corporation choosing, consciously choosing, like, I am going to withhold the Bernays SOP. You know what I mean? And these tactics, these things,
they're huge.
These, like you said, sword and shield, they go a long way if you look into them to really show you that everything, this is my schizo point, everybody's out here trying to influence you. They're all in your head. All the voices are telling you to do things.
Yeah.
But I love that the minutia of some of these laws, like some like that, it always points out to me like how these things are being done. Like, it's so, make other people come to you, use bait if necessary. You might, if you don't study this type of stuff, you wouldn't understand that matters, but it does.
Yeah,
They've done psychology studies that show, like, if I put a hot cup of something in your hand and I ask you to explain what you think about this person, or what you think, like, I show you a picture of a neutral face person, but you're holding a hot drink. You'll describe that person as being more warm, being more friendly, being more whatever. Show the same picture to people holding cold cups. Very cold, very icy, very standoffish person. This and that. Same person though, but it's these little things that subconsciously tweak literally how you think, and how you come to decisions and stuff. And so it's like, my point, I guess, that I'm trying to make is like, you got to study this stuff, man.
You got to look into this stuff.
Start reading some psychology books. You got to start watching some psychology studies. It's not just like, it's not a study like geology is. Like, you can live your whole life and not know what a sedimentary rock is. Like, that's fine. That's totally fine. But I don't see how people can survive out here. Like, it's crazy we don't teach psychology in high school. That's nuts. Like, you got to think that's
I think
designed
you have to,
for a reason.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, they don't want you to wake up, because this is waking up. You read this and then you go work for a fucking retail company and you're like, I know all your sauce.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. What does a paycheck do? Learn to keep people dependent on you.
Facts.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Facts.
I mean, you're exactly right, dude. I had the conversation with my boss before I left that first time. We're like, yeah, man, I'm just going to go do my thing. He's like, well, can't you just do your thing here while you work 44 hours a week for me, destroying your body at the age of 33? And I'm like, I don't think I can, buddy.
I don't think so. It doesn't look like that's in the cards.
Yeah, it doesn't look like what you're giving me. He's like, what if I give you one more bean? I was like, no, dude, I'm sorry. I like the beans. The beans are fine, but I'm going to take all the beans I've already gathered and I'm going to go try to plant some seeds.
Yeah.
Dude,
exactly.
100%. Yeah.
I think about that all the time. Like, when people have like a side gig or like a passion project that they're trying to build, and they also have like a job like that maintains their day-to-day life. And I hear a lot of people that be like, oh, like, I'm looking for more hours at my job, or I'm trying to pick up shifts, like I want to learn how to make some more money to do XYZ, whatever. And I'm always thinking, like, you should be focusing on how to make more money from your side job, the thing that you eventually want to transition in. You shouldn't be investing any more time and effort into the thing that you want to leave. You should be investing more time and effort into the thing that you're trying to get into. But again, the Bernays sauce catches people so hard. Like, this is why, it's so funny. They'll say, 80% of households live paycheck to paycheck here in America, which is a statistic that I've seen many people report. But that includes people that make over $200,000 a year at their job. So it's not necessarily a factor of how much you make. It's a factor of what you do with what you make. And if you're wrapped up in the Bernays sauce and all you do is spend your money and then some on things you don't need, then I'm not surprised that you're living paycheck to paycheck and then some. But if you are not wrapped up in the Bernays sauce, you could live a very non-stressed about money life working at a $25,000 a year job. Yes. As long as you're not spending more than you're making, you're probably going to be in a pretty good financial spot.
Literally. This is where I want to put this whole conversation. This call is my wrap up, honestly.
Okay.
This is just where I'm at with it. You got to think for yourself. Okay. Now,
wake up.
Like, when I say that, though, what I really mean is, like, you have to spend, not just like make up your own mind, because I always said is you're not really making up your mind. That doesn't happen when you're like, oh, I'm just going to take in all the facts, right? I'm going to listen to the news. I'm going to watch some podcasts and take all the facts. I'm going to make a decision. That does not happen. You have to think by yourself, for yourself. You need to go in a room. and you need to think, like, what is money for? Mm-hmm. Where did money come from? What's money designed to do, and what is it for in my life? Like, what do I think money is for?
Right, exactly. We're not trying to get down to like the factual textbook definition of what money is.
This
and
isn't
what
about
it's,
the Fed.
No. This is just about you. Like, this is the whole point of this topic is like, you need to be able to understand, is this for me? Not is this for black people? Is this for people with the same political views that I have? Is this for me?
Yes. Or does any of this matter to me? Like you said,
Does
like,
the black square matter to me?
Does it? You know what I mean? Like, do I feel like I've actually whatever? Like, don't do it because you see everybody else just doing a black square. Don't just whatever. Like, you know, when you're talking about money, I'm like, most people, the reason they live paycheck to paycheck is because they think money is for spending.
Right.
That's what you do with money. It's like, why do you have money? To spend it, of course, and that is not necessarily what
To
money is
obtain
for.
pleasure.
That's not what I
know
use
I mean?
money
Like,
for.
I definitely don't use it for that. You know what I mean? So I'm like, it could be a lot of different things, but you got to figure that out for yourself, man. You got to sit down. You got to really think like, you're not a fucking Democrat. You're not a Republican. You're not a black person, you are you. And you got to decide for you, like, what is important to me in life? What do I need in life? What do I want in life? You know, and why do I want those things? This level of like self-reflection and self-understanding is the ultimate defense against these tactics to me, honestly. You know, I see most people who are susceptible to this type of influence are people who have done very little thinking for themselves. And so, you know, if you want to protect yourself from even just fucking commercials, man, or just like I said, your political agendas, your social medias, like all these things are not designed to help you.
Advertising. Like, this is the one thing that's really, like, we've talked about it many times, maybe on the podcast about, you know, social medias and stuff and how they'll have targeted ads. And I'm in the camp that I prefer targeted ads, because although they are ads for things that I'm more interested in buying, I am aware that they are things that I'm more interested in buying. And so when I look at it, it's also something like, it's a practice that I've done, is like I can admire something without having to own it. And that's something that I've had to teach myself. Like, I can admire the design of a good whatever without having to buy it for myself if I don't need it.
He's a window shopper.
Window shopper. Yeah, exactly. So like, when I scroll through Instagram and they show me the fire targeted ad, like for instance, I've been getting targeted ads for this company called Mountain Tough. And it's like it's an online workout program service designed for people who are trying to do like backcountry backpacking hunts and stuff. And so the whole program is designed around that. And you could pay a whatever fee each month to be part of this program and do all these things. And I'm like, wow, I'd probably get some value out of that. But then again, I also have done tons and tons of hours of research on how to work out on my own at home with very minimal equipment. And it's when I look at the ad, like the little ad video that they show me, I'm like, oh, he's just got a ruck bag on. I could do that. Yeah. I don't need somebody to tell me that I need to put a ruck bag on today and walk 10 miles up a hill. I could just do that myself. And so I'm like, hey, that's a cool service. Scroll by. Ooh, that's a cool shirt. I scroll right on by. And so sometimes I buy things. Sometimes I don't buy things. But it's the ability to see an ad that's targeted to you, because it's really hard to get away from these like targeted ads or just people trying to manipulate you. Like, you're never going to get away from that. But it's just being able to be like, oh, he's manipulating me, and he's trying to manipulate me in a direction that I don't want to go. So I'm not going to do that. Right. But I'm perfectly willing to let people manipulate me in the direction that I was already going.
Yeah. They're targeting an impulse. That's what you're hitting at.
Right.
Is that like Google Pixel phone is targeting an impulse. And it's your impulse to be an ally,
a racial ally, right?
Or because like I think every one of us at this table denounces racism. You know?
Absolutely.
I told the racist, step back and stand up.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, sit the fuck down, bitch.
Yeah,
see you later, racist.
Yeah. But yeah, not only your impulses, but your identities too. Yeah. You know, that's another big one. Is
but our consciousness doesn't have all of our consciousness are unique. So it doesn't matter what color your consciousness is or what it identifies as. It is unique. It is its own singular, unique thing, even though we're everything. But it's its own unique thing. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I mean...
You know what's really interesting about what you said, though? Everybody's consciousness is unique, but everybody's subconscious is exactly the same.
Oh, that's deep.
Everybody, and that's why these things work on everybody, because your subconscious is monkey brain. Yeah, you got monkey brains underneath all of your ideas and your identity and your cool clothes and all that. You have monkey brains. Yes. And Edward Bernays and government officials and fucking politicians and company people are just bypassing your whole "this is me and my identity" brain and just digging deep into your fucking monkey brain.
Which sees
and what
skin
we
tones
need to do is
yeah.
just you need to use your conscious brain to put a force field around your monkey brain, so that other people can't just jab in there and be like, "You need some of this," and you just get jostled around. You're like, "I need some of that."
Yeah, we were talking a little bit offline before the podcast about like, I just want to point out some more things. Repetition. Repetition is another way that they get into your monkey brain. So it's like, even if you hear something once and you think, "Oh, that's not true," or I don't believe that, but then you hear it again, you hear it again, you hear it again. So like, I have to guard myself from what type of things I intake. I can't watch a lot of news because then it's gonna, even if I'm like watching, I'm like, this Ukraine-Russia, that's the hot topic right now. This Ukraine-Russia thing isn't a big deal, But then I keep watching the news.
Yeah,
and
you keep
like,
letting them tell you it's a big deal.
No, but trust me, it's a big deal. And you're like, it's not a big deal. I mean, trust me, dude, it can't be a big deal. But then you go to another news station, they're like, it's a big deal, man. It's staying a big deal.
They're trying to talk that shit into existence.
Yeah, and you're right. And after a while, it gets harder. And they're not only they're saying it, they're presenting all this evidence of why it's a bigger deal than you think it is, and yada yada yada. And whether it's a big deal or not, I don't really know. I don't live in Ukraine. I don't live in Russia. But that's my point, is if I subject myself to that repetition, I will start to believe that regardless if I wanted to or not,
Here's maybe a better example of that, of repetition being used. A lot of people probably wonder why the fuck McDonald's spends money on ads.
Yes.
Like, what,
people know
honestly,
what McDonald's is, right?
Yeah, what McDonald's. Everybody knows what McDonald's is. You can go to any country in the world, even if they don't have McDonald's, and if they've had a few Americans visit, they know what McDonald's is. And so you're sitting there, you're like, why is McDonald's advertising? But McDonald's wants to make sure that when you think of burgers, you think of McDonald's. You don't think of anybody else. So they have to keep reminding you McDonald's is who you is the burger. So when you think, I want fast food burgers, you think McDonald's. You don't think whatever else is out there, because they've got you so many times with the repetition.
Do you want even better? To remind you that you like McDonald's.
To remind you.
You might be sitting at home on the couch, just big chilling, watching TV. You're chilling. Next thing you know, McDonald's.
You're not even fucking hungry.
Don't you like McDonald's? And you're like, yeah.
Hey, y'all want to go get some food?
Like some
I'm kind of hungry, dog. Like, yeah, you are kind of hungry.
Yeah, you are hungry.
Where should we go?
Let me expose a little something, another little something to you. Guess what made you hungry then, even though you weren't hungry? Mm-hmm. It was the colors.
Oh yeah, it
was the colors. I want you to do me a favor, guys. Actually, let's have you do this for the viewers, so that way we don't even have to bother them. They can just keep watching. Go ahead and just look up fast food burger joint logos. Just look up fast food logos, fast food burger logos. Tell me how many you see with red and yellow in them.
1, 2. I mean,
pretty much all of them.
75%.
Pretty much all of them have yellow and red.
Hardee's.
Now, why is that?
Churches,
why is red and yellow such a prominent
huge
color
Even Dunkin'
scheme?
Donuts tried to be slick and giving you pink and orange.
Yeah,
like, come on, man.
Which are just two different hues of red and yellow.
Yeah.
And the reason is because after countless studies, they have found out that red and yellow, among other things, stimulate hunger.
Shout out Bojangles. Bojangles.
Classic Bojangles, yo. If you don't know about, everybody's hot on that Raisin Cane's, but Bojangles is the shit.
Yeah, it's right there, bro.
And this is something I started learning about this even before I found out about Bernays. But the first time I was exposed to this was when I found out why Best Buy's color scheme was blue and yellow. Yellow is a very attractive color. It catches your attention. But blue is actually the main color you see at a Best Buy. And you just think that maybe the guy who started Best Buy liked blue. Or really, you don't ever think about it when you walk in. You don't even, the fact that people are wearing blue shirts doesn't even enter your mind. But let me explain to you why Best Buy has all of their people wear blue shirts and that the whole store is colored blue. They're specifically trying to market electronics to older generations that have problems with electronics. That's why they still have standalone stores that you can come into and get Geek Squad help and shit and service and people. And the reason that everything's blue, the reason why you're wearing a blue shirt, and I used to work at Best Buy, this is how I found all this out. The reason that everything's blue is because they know that old people are easily frustrated with technology, and when they come into the store, they're gonna be frustrated. And blue is a calming, soothing color. it calms you down psychologically, just enough, just a little bit, and that little bit is just enough for them to sell you a new iPhone.
What it does to me is it makes me have to pee.
It could do that too.
It does. Oh, it does.
There's no could here.
Every time between the ages of like 13 to 24, every time I walked into a Best Buy, FYE, record store, any place, I was going to go up to the thing and then look for some CDs. I just get there and I'm like, I have to pee so bad, I'm going to pee in my pants. And then there's like no bathroom and I got to like leave to go in the mall to go find a bathroom. It would be like...
I wouldn't be surprised to find out that there are studies that say that these colors induce peeing in certain people.
That's what I'm telling you.
I've
done the research.
But that's how deep it goes.
That's how deep it goes.
That's how deep
the
it goes.
things that you think are completely arbitrary and mean nothing, that you don't think about, are absolutely 100% calculated and done for a reason. Nobody is out here, other than maybe us, the masses, the people at the top, the people selling you all these things, the people making the rules. Everything is calculated. Yep. Everything is calculated. They're not making one move without calculating.
Do you think your DMs need a ding?
They don't.
Like, do you need a ding every time you get a DM?
Your mailbox doesn't have a ding.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, a mailman show up every day. No ding.
No ding.
Motherfucking ding.
You want what's in there, so you go to the mailbox.
But they knew. They were like, hey, if we ring this bell, they'll come running, though.
Yeah,
and they do.
Pavlov taught us that.
Yep. Yeah, they hit you with the Pavlov's dog move.
Yep.
Yo, study out psychology. Pavlov's dogs.
Yeah,
right?
if they put Ian on the end of your name, or they.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Pavlovian.
Pay attention. Yeah. Dead ass, man. But that's huge. John talks about the way they do grocery stores, you know, like how the grocery
layout
store is designed.
And what's funny is I was in a Goodwill the other day that wasn't laid out. I think like the way that psychologically you should lay something like a Goodwill out, and it was chaos.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolute chaos.
It's terrible.
I hated it.
Yep.
I hated it. I didn't like the line.
The worst shopping
formation.
experience.
Nothing.
100%.
But you go to a go to a Kroger owned store. Go to a
Kroger's on
Delhaize
point.
owned store. Go to any of these places. Even Walmart's got it down to a certain science. You build it in such a way to appeal to the psychological aspects. So it's like one way in, one way out. You know what I'm saying? Could you go to my document real quick?
I can.
So let's scroll down. Once you walk in, many supermarkets, swing gates prevent you from walking out the same door.
Yep.
Grocery stores display fruits and vegetables so that they catch the viewer's eye as soon as they enter the store. The natural imagery, fresh scents, and bright colors inspire a positive and happy mental state. It's important from the supermarket's perspective to get people away from the edges and draw them into the center if they're buying particular products. That's why you put all like your milk in the corner, you know what I'm saying, your produce up front. You try to get them on an experience where they're passing as many open lanes as you can get them to pass. Because the more lanes you get them to pass, the more opportunities you have for end caps to entice them. So you have particular products or ones like cereal and coffee, which require shoppers to choose between a variety of brands. They're placed away from high traffic areas. So if you really need to stop and think about it, you got some space.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? There's
got
like
time.
a whole aisle of just cereal.
Yeah.
You know, they give you the time. And then you say, they're signaling to you that these brands at the end of the aisle are important, interesting things, because the ends are used to signal products that are particularly important or interesting. So they're like, look at the end.
They're standing
you
out.
got a deal. Come get this deal. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is, when people are like, well, why don't you just put, okay, like you got more product in, just why are there empties on the shelf? Just put other product there. These companies pay for the fucking centimeter, dude.
Yep.
Like if you want an end cap in a store over by the milk,
It's more.
It's expensive.
Keebler,
'Cause it's-
you know, Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
you're gonna be dropping G's, dog, hot G's on a Kroger
Shelf
manager.
placement, height placement, all of that plays into it. Things that are for children on the bottom because that's where they see. Things that are the most expensive and well known right at adult eye level because that's where you're looking.
Length of aisles.
Also,
the fact that like if I go into the middle of the cereal section to get my cereal, I now have to also walk through that entire aisle and see everything else there is to offer. But that, like they don't make them like short little like gridded. Like it's like you're gonna go all the way up and down these long aisles so we can present you with as much product. And so you know, I mean, it's just hard out here, and especially if you don't know how this is working, man. That it's just
one
difficult.
thing that I must have watched this video like 4 years ago, but it just popped in my mind. I remember watching a TED Talk, and it was a guy talking about the psychology behind choices. God, I wish I could remember this. It was a bald dude with glasses. I'll find it. We'll put it in the description for you guys so you can check it out. But basically, I remember this one specific point in his lecture where he was talking about wine. And he was saying, let's say that you have a store and you're selling wine, and you have 3 wines on the shelf. You have a low end, a middle end, and you have a high end wine. He said, well, studies have shown that most people don't want to buy the low end, but they also aren't really going to splurge for the high end, so they'll buy the middle of the road wine. They don't want to buy the cheap wine, but they also can't afford the expensive wine. So if you're a smart wine seller, what you'll do is you'll put an uber expensive wine at the end of that line. So now you got 4 wines, and what that does is it increases the amount of people that will gravitate towards the higher end but lesser higher end wine, because now
called a hard anchor.
It's called a hard anchor, exactly. And this is a book from Robert Cialdini called Persuasion, and it also like it's a must read as far as I'm concerned. 48 Laws of Power, both of Robert Cialdini's books, Persuasion and Persuasion. And
Never Split the Difference
by Chris Voss. We'll have all the books that you should read down in the description as well. And it, when he said that, like, we even talked about like the amount of choices that you have has a direct correlation with how positive you feel about that choice after the fact. And he talked about certain like experiments where they did like in hospitals, they had people who were terminally ill. They had people, like random people, paint paintings, and then they presented paintings to these terminally ill people to hang up in their rooms to like help them, like raise their spirits or whatever. And in the studies, if they presented them with 5 paintings and told them, pick a painting, and then, in a week's time, we'll ask you whether or not you want to swap it out for any of the other paintings. But if you give them 2 paintings and you give them the same option, I can't remember I don't want to give out the wrong percentage numbers, but basically a large percentage of people would opt to swap out their painting if there were more choices than if there were just the 2 that you present them originally. And he said that this is the same. Even if you just give them one option, people feel better about their choices because they'll just rationalize it afterwards. If you had less of a choice, you just rationalize it.
2 political parties.
Exactly. That's why there's only 2 political parties. That's why they're, it's
Stop, dude.
You force choices, and then people will be like, well, and that's why there's a whole social stigma against voting third party. Yeah. Because people are like, well, why would you even do that? Like that's not going to be, you're throwing away your vote. You're doing this and you're doing that. And you're going to get this guy not, whatever. And it's like, exactly. That's not the choices. We gave you choices and you fucked off and tried to pick somebody else. Like that's not following the rules.
Yeah. For sure. That I kind of already laid out my conclusion on your statements on this. That's why I said I'm like, think for yourselves, man. That's the only way to really free yourself from this stuff is to spend time exploring your world with your own. Like first, you gotta understand your emotions and like how those operate and how you can control those yourself without any external like need. That's my own side bit, but. Even just spending time and knowing what makes you tick, what type of like identities you have, and like all that, understanding yourself and your world is a good protection against this. Reading some of those books about psychology and like learning some of this stuff, because to me, as far as I'm concerned, this is a universal skill, man. Like the world is built on people. That's it. Like everything we do is just people talking to other people. That's it. Doesn't matter if I put you in a McDonald's, on the dance floor, at the mall. It doesn't matter. Here in this podcast, it's just all talking. So if you don't know how people work, you're at a huge disadvantage.
My takeaway is similar. It is essentially what you're saying, but spread out a little bit. So it's like, even if you don't read these books, even if you're not completely waking up to how everything is trying to influence you, right? That you're kind of in the group that's being manipulated. Like, just try to be an individual, try to figure out what that individual identity is. Because it's not, I work at this place. That's not your identity. It's not the car you own. It's not how many beans you collect. Like, that's not the identity. Find the identity. You know what I mean? Like, that's like Century of the Self goes really hard on psychoanalysis. And what I have to say is like, that's a good way to kind of figure out your individuality. Some people learn through therapy, assessing figuring out their traumas, psychoanalysis. Some people learn from talking to their friends, or, like for me, it was like, I had a psychedelic experience. I watched this 4-part Century of the Self documentary, and it kind of push my brain in a direction that was like, figure out what you are, because you're not what you're presenting to the world right now. You're not just a good stalker. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're so much. I truly had the belief, and Rod came and gave me that belief. It was like, your ideas matter. And I was like, damn, maybe that's what maybe that's what I am. Maybe I can implement my ideas, and that's what I can be. And that was a huge awakening moment for me, that if I just eat hot chip, twerk, consume TikTok, I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to get there.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah, and, you know, if you do what everybody else does, you'll get what everybody else is getting.
Yeah, which is life on the hamster wheel, buddy.
Hey, if you like running on hamster wheels, don't let us dissuade you from doing that.
Hey, millions of people do it every day.
Education.
Welcome to the machine. Yeah, for real.
All right, now we'll end this session of Bernays saucing you to get rid of your Bernays sauce.
Yeah, we'll leave you with a Bernays soaked napkin. This has been the Tie-Dye Guys.
All right, man. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you again next time.
Peace.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this.